Now that we've added supports, let's take a look at how to edit the support details for further refinement. We're going to select the model, choose Generate Supports. As long as we've chosen to keep the editor, we should be able to continue to edit these supports. We're going to move from the Analysis tab over to the Edit tab. Currently, no details are selected because we have not chosen any supports. As you choose the support, the type of support will change the options available to edit the different details. I'm going to select all supports. The first change we should look at is the different material profiles you have to choose from. These will change the overall profile of the supports and mostly their size in terms of bar supports. So select the profile you would like to use, choose the gear, and choose load. Now with a bar support, the main details that are commonly edited are the size of the bar support, the breaking point, the pad on the platform, and how the breaking point meets the part surface. First, if we look at bar contour, it tells us some of the more standard features. We have a solid bar is most common, hexagonal shaped. Next is distance to part. Distance to part is important to notice that it is a negative number. It is a negative number because it is going inside of the surface of the model that distance. So right now it is through negative 0.1. You might increase this number if you have a curved or arced or angled surface. You can see it goes further into the model there. You don't want that at 0 because then it won't meet the part. So that should stay at negative 0.1 and can be adjusted accordingly. Other details that you may want to adjust are the width on part. That's the overall size of the bar support. If we increase that, you can see it change. That's typically the best way to figure out what you want to change about your supports. For the most part, they're going to load already in a really good supporting detail in terms of their size. Depending on the green strength or stiffness of the material you're printing with, you may change that. The breaking point is something that is also commonly changed. Right now it'll break off very close to the part. I could adjust this here and see it change, and that'll bring my breaking point in a little bit more narrow. It's good to play around with these. You can use the material processing guide for suggested details or sizes that you can use, and it's great to play with these, especially if you're trying to aim for high throughput parts, testing and prototyping how well those break off for you. Right angle on part is exactly what it sounds like. Right now it's at no. If I change this to yes, right now these are vertical, so they're not changing much. If you have a bar support that meets at an angle or on the side, that will change the shape of the bar support, and this can be turned on and off. Lastly, on bar supports, at the bottom we have what's known as a pad. That's the pad on the platform. If we choose no, you'll see that disappear, and then we just have bar supports there. The pads are great for adding extra structural stability to your print, as well as increasing the adhesion to the build platform in this case. I like the pad on the platform. You'll also notice that all these pads touch, which in this instance is good. If they did not and they were too small, obviously they don't have as much surface adhesion, but the nice thing about a larger pad where they touch all of the other supports nearby is that when you peel this support off, they'll be connected. It will be very easy to peel that off and clean up when you're done. You can also change the pad height if need be. Those are most of the support details that people will change for bar supports. Let's take a look at Polyline. Okay, so here we have more than one polyline. We have all three. We have our angled there, actually. And so what I'm going to do is hit Control A to edit all these supports. With our Polyline supports, again, we can go and change the material profile. You'll see tough is a little bit thicker than rigid, and then the elastomerics are generally quite a bit bigger because our elastomeric materials have lower green strength and stiffness while printing. As you're editing Polyline supports, again, the distance to part is -0.1. So here we have an angled surface. If we zoom in, you'll see they are still meeting the part entirely on that surface, which is good. And if we clip this plane and try to take a look, we can see how that penetrates into the part. Let's try the X. And we can see there how the Polyline is meeting that angled surface well there. If you notice that you have a Polyline support that's kind of hanging in the middle of nowhere, you can increase that distance to part. Structure properties. This is where a lot of people, when they're first starting out, notice, hey, my Polyline support is very, very thin, or I want to adjust kind of its thickness, and that is within thickening up structure hatches. So that is your hatches. This is the top. If I increase this, you'll see the top of my structure grow. And that is overall thickening up the bottom as well. If I decrease that number, you'll see that change. You can also change the size of the hatches. We are on the wired wall, which is generally seems to be kind of the best. There's the punched plate, but the wired wall seems to work really well and is recommended. So as you're adjusting the width and height, that is the size of the bracing in between, and then the intervals in between that as well. You have the thickening, and then we have our maximum height and solid structure, generally not adjusted too often. Border width is the actual border that is along the sides. If we increase that, you'll see that change. Generally not adjusted too much. Moving on, the connections are typically adjusted for the top of the part and where it meets. Generally, this is going to be fairly easy to break off. If I have an angled surface here, one thing I will tend to do is increase the connection height to give more room in case it's intersecting the actual part walls, and you can change your connection type or connection width. Trapezoid seems to be the most recommended within the Polyline. If you have a Polyline that is connecting from a part to another part instead of the platform, you can also choose to edit the bottom part connection in the same way, and in that instance you would also change structure properties, thickening up the bottom probably to match the top, and you will notice that taper would then match down below, and you can change those connections as needed. The last thing to note about editing a Polyline is the angled block support. I'm going to select just one. The angled block support allows you to create an angle, a support at an angle. Kind of a tough situation to see it here, as this is at such a large angle, but on more of a straight vertical Polyline, which we'll look at later, you can see how that would change. So here you can see the angle in that support, and right now I'm restricted due to where it meets down here. And we're going to turn that off. Those are how you edit support details. Best way to learn is by trying and using the undo button.